Hello and welcome back to Koko's Sleep, a podcast of original children's bedtime stories and meditations designed to make bedtime a dream. Psst, Koko Club members, Wednesday's episode is going to be a big one. Finally, our little koala friend Koko is going to meet Hector and Sunny. I can't wait to share the shenanigans that the three furry friends get up to together. It's going to be a cracker. Meanwhile, though, Koko is in a spot of bother. He has lost his precious pink ukulele somewhere in Sleepy Forest and really wants to find it. But how? Well, luckily for Koko, a new neighbour has moved into Sleepy Forest who might be able to help. A puffin by the name of Agatha Periwinkle has arrived. And she has a big dream. She wants to become a detective. With Koko's help, she makes that dream come true and sets off to see if she can solve her first case. Lie back and relax as I begin Agatha Periwinkle and the Lost Ukulele by Gillian Rogerson. Deep in the heart of a faraway forest stood a cosy wooden cabin. Inside the cabin lived a family of koalas. The youngest member of the family was called Koko. One morning, Koko and his family were getting ready to head out and meet a new neighbour who'd recently moved to Sleepy Forest, a puffin called Agatha Periwinkle. The koalas were very keen to welcome Agatha to their friendly community. Koko and his grandpa had baked a special cake for her. Koko wasn't quite ready to leave the cabin just yet. The little koala was down on the floor in his bedroom and looking under the bed for something. His grandma came into the room, took one look at her grandson and said softly, "Koko, you've already looked under your bed 5 times. Your ukulele isn't there." Koko stood up and said, "I know, but I just wanted to check again, in case it was hiding right at the back. I've looked in my wardrobe again and behind my curtains, and I can't find it anywhere. I wish I could remember where I last had it, Grandma." His grandma put her arm around Koko's shoulders and said, "It will turn up somewhere. I just know it will. Let's take your mind off your ukulele for a while. We're ready to set off to meet our new neighbour. Are you ready to go now?" Koko nodded. He glanced at the bed one last time, as though expecting his pink ukulele to magically appear on top of it. It didn't. So Koko took his grandma's paw and left the room with her. The rest of Koko's family were waiting by the front door for him. His mum asked Koko if he would like to carry the special cake for their new neighbour. It was inside a tin in the kitchen. Koko said yes and ran into the kitchen to collect the tin. He had made the cake with his grandpa. They did a lot of baking together, and Koko always had a lot of fun with Grandpa. Thinking about those fun times made all thoughts of the lost ukulele disappear from Koko's mind. With a smile on his little face, Koko left the cabin with his family and headed along the path through Sleepy Forest. He held the cake tin firmly in his little paws. Koko asked questions about their new neighbour, Agatha Periwinkle. Did his family know where she had lived before? Did she have any children? Did she like bedtime stories and hot chocolate? His family didn't know the answers to his questions. His grandma said, "Some of my friends have already visited Agatha, and they told me she's very friendly. I'm glad she's bought that cottage by the sea. It's been empty for a long time." Koko said, I'd love to live by the sea. Do you think Agatha can swim? Does she have a boat? Grandma smiled at her curious grandson and said he could ask Agatha those questions when he met her. Koko smiled and walked along, humming happily to himself. Before too long, the koalas heard the soothing sound of the sea. They walked around a bend in the path and saw the sandy beach ahead of them. The blue waves of the sea lapped gently upon the golden shore. Not far from the beach stood a cosy cottage with a straw roof. A small, neatly tended garden surrounded the cottage, and in the garden were a couple of benches with a low table between them. On the table was a full jug of lemonade, and beside it stood a collection of glasses. A puffin with periwinkle-coloured feathers and a small orange beak was sitting on one of the benches. As Koko walked closer to the puffin, he couldn't decide if her feathers were pale purple or a pastel blue. The colour reminded him of the twilight sky when only a few stars had appeared. The puffin noticed the koalas walking towards her and jumped off the bench. She raised her wing in hello and smiled at them. Koko's mum waved and said, "I do hope we're not interrupting you. We're the koala family, and we wanted to stop by and say hello." Agatha's smile grew bigger. She said, "Oh, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Agatha Periwinkle. Please do come into the garden and take a seat. I've just made some lemonade." Agatha opened the garden gate, and the koala family walked through it. Koko was the last one through the gate. He handed the cake to Agatha and said, "Hi, I'm Koko. I've made you a cake to welcome you to Sleepy Forest. My granddad helped me to make it. I hope you like cake. I do. I love cake. And hot chocolate too. And bedtime stories. Do you like bedtime stories? I love them." Agatha took the cake, smiled at the little koala, and said, "Thank you, Koko. I absolutely love cake. And hot chocolate. And yes, I do like bedtime stories too. When my children were young, I used to tell them a bedtime story every night. Do you like lemonade?" Koko said he did. He followed Agatha over to the wooden table and helped her to pour the refreshing drink into glasses and then to give them out. Agatha asked her guests to take a seat on the benches. Once everyone was seated, Agatha said, "Thank you for coming to see me. I've had many kind visitors since I moved into this cottage a few days ago. Everyone in Sleepy Forest is very friendly." The koalas chatted about the forest and told Agatha how long they had lived there. Agatha told her new friends that she used to live in the city, but it was always a dream of hers to live by the ocean. One of her children told her about the cottage and said Agatha should buy it, and that's what Agatha did. She loved being by the water and watching the waves move back and forth over the golden sand. It was such a soothing sight. The koalas agreed. Grandma asked Agatha what she was going to do with her time. Did she have any hobbies or places she wanted to visit? She was very welcome to join Grandma's book club if she wanted to. With a twinkle in her eyes, Agatha said, "I have another dream. I have always wanted to be a detective. and I would love to set up my own detective agency." "Wow," Koko said. "That sounds amazing." Koko's grandma told Agatha she should definitely make her detective dream come true, and if they could help her in any way, she need only ask. Agatha gave the koalas a soft smile and said that was very kind of them. She frowned a little and said, "I don't know where to begin with my detective dream, though. Should I ask around the forest and see if anyone has a mystery they'd like me to solve?" Koko's eyes grew as wide as saucers. He put his glass down, jumped off the bench, and jigged excitedly from side to side as he tried to get his words out. "I've got a mystery. I've lost my pink ukulele. I can't find it anywhere. I've looked and looked under my bed, inside the wardrobe, in the garden shed, even behind the sofa." He stopped jigging about and looked at Agatha Periwinkle. "Could you help me? Please? Could you help me find my ukulele?" Agatha smiled and said, "Koko, I would love to help you. Give me a moment. I need to collect something from inside." She jumped off the bench and hastened into her home. She returned a moment later, wearing a bright orange hat with a pale brown satchel slung over her wing. Agatha pointed to her hat and explained it was her official detective's hat, and she had bought it years ago in the hope of making her detective dream come true one day. And in her satchel were some items she might need during an investigation, including a notepad and pencil. The detective Puffin took out the notepad and pencil. She opened the pad, and with the pencil poised above it ready to write, she asked Koko for the full details surrounding the mysterious disappearance of his ukulele. Koko began. "It all started a few days ago. I was at home with Grandpa, and we were baking brownies in the kitchen. We've made them before, and I knew they would take ages and ages to cook. And I knew that once they were cooked, they had to cool down for a long, long time before we could finally eat them. I said to Grandpa I would practice playing my ukulele whilst I waited for the brownies to be ready. It was a sunny day, so I collected my ukulele from the living room and started to walk through Sleepy Forest." Koko stopped and looked at Agatha in confusion. He said he had visited many places in the forest, but he just couldn't remember where he had stopped first. Agatha, who had been writing everything down in her notepad, said, "I've read a lot of mystery books, and when someone can't remember what they did, the detective asks them to retrace their steps to see if that helps them to remember. That's what you need to do, Koko. You need to retrace your steps. I think the best place to start would be back at your cabin. If it's okay with your family, we could go there now and start our investigation." The koalas agreed to Agatha's plan. They finished their drinks and stood up. Grandma said, "This is so very exciting, Agatha. I love reading mystery stories too, and I can't wait to see how your first case is solved." Agatha smiled at Koko's grandma and asked if she'd like to be Agatha's assistant, because all detectives in stories had assistants. Grandma broke into a big, happy smile and said she would love that. With her detective hat firmly in place, Agatha Periwinkle walked with the koalas through Sleepy Forest and to their family home. Koko gave her a quick tour of the house. Agatha proclaimed it to be a very welcoming and cosy home. Koko took Agatha and her assistant into the kitchen. He stood next to the table and, as seriously as he could, said, "This is exactly where I was when I finished making the brownies. I made 24 of them and put some chocolate chunks on top. I did eat a few chunks, but I can't remember how many. Then I grabbed my ukulele and went outside." Agatha wrote down everything that Koko said. She asked him to show her what had happened next. Koko left the kitchen and went into the living room. Agatha and his grandma followed him. Koko pretended to grab his ukulele, which had been resting against the sofa, and then, with a happy spring in his step, he left the cabin and walked down the steps and onto the path that led into Sleepy Forest. Agatha and his grandma continued to follow the little koala. Agatha carefully wrote down every detail of his journey. Over his shoulder, Koko said to Agatha and his grandma, "I was very happy because I was thinking about the brownies and how delicious they would taste later. I carried on walking and I headed towards the—" His steps slowed for a moment. "Oh, I remember now. I headed towards the pond where the frogs lived. There are some smooth rocks next to the pond, and I love how warm they get in the sun. It's one of my favourite places to sit, and I thought the frogs might like to listen to my ukulele." Agatha wrote down his every word and told Koko to head towards the pond and sit in the exact place he had done before. Koko skipped on down the path, still pretending he was holding his ukulele. The two koalas and the detective Puffin soon arrived at the pond. Koko said hello to the frogs in the water. He introduced them to Agatha and explained she was going to solve the mystery of his missing ukulele. One of the frogs said, "I remember when you were here a few days ago, Koko. We were practicing our yoga moves, and when you saw us, you started to play a lovely slow song on your ukulele." Agatha asked the frogs if they could do the same yoga moves again, if they didn't mind. And could Koko pretend to play the same tune on his imaginary ukulele? The frogs gathered together at the side of the pond. Koko sat on the same rock he had done a few days ago, with his imaginary instrument in his arms. Slowly and elegantly, the frogs moved their legs and arms into graceful yoga positions. Koko quietly hummed the tune he had played on the ukulele days before. It was a soft, soothing sound and made the detective and her assistant sway gently from side to side. The graceful frogs continued with their slow movements. Koko continued to softly hum. Agatha and Koko's grandma swayed slowly from side to side. Koko's grandma blinked tiredly, and a small yawn escaped from her. Some of the frogs yawned too. The frogs came to the end of their yoga routine and said they felt so very relaxed and that they were going to have a nap. The frogs gave their visitors a sleepy goodbye and settled down on the soft grass and fell asleep. Koko looked at the sleeping frogs, and a light feeling of drowsiness settled on him. Agatha asked Koko what he had done after playing music for the frogs. The little koala said, "I picked up my ukulele and walked away from the pond. I went that way." He pointed to the left. Agatha indicated for him to go that way. Off he went, the puffin detective and her assistant right behind him. Koko strolled along the path and hummed the soothing song he had played for the yoga-loving frogs. His grandma yawned again. After a while, Koko came to a stop outside the home of his good friend, Prickles the hedgehog. Prickles loved balloons, and he always had a collection of them tied to the roof of his house and on the branches of trees nearby. As luck would have it, Prickles came out of his house at that very moment. He waved and said hello to Koko and the others. Koko introduced Agatha to Prickles and told his friend why they were there. Prickles said, "I remember when you came here a few days ago, Koko, and you definitely had your ukulele with you then. One of the balloons on my roof floated free just after you arrived, and you played a special tune on your ukulele as we watched it float up to the sky. Do you remember that?" Koko smiled and said, "I do remember." The balloon was twirling and whirling in the wind. It looked like it was dancing, so I made up a special tune for it. He pretended to play his imaginary ukulele, and he hummed the gentle balloon dancing song. Prickles moved over to a tree and untied a glittering gold balloon. A gentle breeze caught it and carried it into the air. The balloon drifted and bobbed around Prickles and his visitors. Koko carried on humming the soothing tune. The balloon floated effortlessly around the hedgehog's house. The breeze wrapped around the glittering gold balloon and carried it higher and higher. Koko continued humming. The glittering balloon drifted higher and higher, sparkling like a golden gem in the blue sky. Koko's grandma yawned. So did Prickles. The hedgehog, the koalas, and the detective puffin watched the balloon floating higher and higher until they couldn't see it anymore. Koko stopped singing and covered up a yawn with his paw. Prickles yawned again and said watching the balloon whilst listening to Koko's lovely song had made him very tired, and he felt the need for a nap. He waved goodbye and went back inside his home. Agatha made some notes on her pad and asked Koko where he had gone after leaving Prickles' house, and if he had taken the ukulele with him. Koko thought about her questions and turned slowly around as he tried to remember where he had gone next. He stopped turning, pointed to the right, and said, "I went that way. I did have my ukulele with me because I played it as I walked along." Koko began to play his imaginary ukulele again and walked away from Prickles' house. Agatha and her assistant followed him. Koko strolled through the meadow, humming a gentle melody. His song mingled with a quiet buzz of the bumblebees and the backyard choir of birds softly tweeting. Koko stopped humming now and again to let out a gentle yawn or two. And when Koko yawned, his grandma did too. Agatha made a note of everything that happened. Koko walked along the side of a babbling stream, still humming his tranquil tune. He walked over a wooden bridge and paused to look at the gently flowing water beneath him. His gaze was soft and calm. He yawned twice and then continued on his way. A few minutes later, Koko stopped humming and gave Agatha a befuddled look. He said, "I can't remember where I went next. I must have gone somewhere, though." Agatha looked through her notes and told Koko he had yawned 23 times since they had set off from his cabin. She gave him a soft smile and said, "After you left Prickles' house and crossed the bridge, could you have had a nap?" Koko replied, "I might have done. I often have a nap in Sleepy Forest. Everyone does." Agatha nodded. "Do you have a favourite place to take a nap around here?" Koko said he did, and he led them over to a beautiful willow tree. He pushed aside the leafy curtain of hanging branches and moved into the shade inside. And there, propped up against the trunk of the willow tree, was Koko's pink ukulele. Koko's little mouth dropped open in surprise, and he stared at the ukulele. Then he started to chuckle. He said, "I can't believe I left it here." Agatha said, "Perhaps when you woke up from your nap, your first thoughts were about the brownies you'd baked earlier, and you knew they would now be ready to eat. Is it possible you rushed home and totally forgot about your ukulele?" Koko grinned and said that was exactly what had happened, and he'd only just remembered because he had retraced his steps just like Agatha had suggested. He thanked Agatha and told her she was a great detective. Agatha blushed a little and said he had been a great first client, and she had enjoyed her walk through Sleepy Forest with Koko and his grandma very much. Thinking about the relaxing walk made Agatha yawn. Koko yawned, and so did Koko's grandma. Koko said to Agatha, "If you need a nap, this is a wonderful place to take one. Shall I play you a song on my ukulele?" He grinned and added, "My real one this time, not an imaginary one." Agatha said she would love that. The tired detective and her sleepy assistant settled down on the soft grass, snug and cosy inside the gently swaying branches of the willow tree. Koko picked up his ukulele and sat down with his back against the tree trunk. He plucked the strings on the pink ukulele, and a beautiful, soothing sound flowed around the resting animals. Koko's grandma smiled and fell into a gentle sleep. Agatha Periwinkle fell asleep soon after and dreamed about being a world-famous detective. In her dream, she saw her cottage by the sea, and there was a sign on her gate that read, "The Periwinkle Detective Agency. Please come in." Koko played his ukulele for a little longer. Then he laid down on the soft grass, wrapped his arms around his beloved instrument, and drifted off into a deep, deep sleep.